Where's the time? There's. I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sains. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Daniel Culver. We're here to review the movie The Final Countdown, 1980 movie recommended by Patrick McCray, directed by Don Taylor.
That drunk. He was too drunk to really shoot the movie. It's true.
Really?
It's true. Yeah.
I'm thinking the
weird stories from the Navy about his behavior on deck.
Yeah.
Lloyd Kaufman says all sorts of weird stuff about him, that he was just too schnockered to really finish the shoot.
Oh God.
There's a lot to get to with this movie. There's two questions to Patrick, to all of you guys really, but we'll start with Patrick first. First of all, when did you see this movie, and what did you think of the score of this film?
God, I'm glad you asked me that question. I saw this movie in 1980, in the summer of 80, when it came out. You know, my father's a Navy man, and so it was must-see viewing. We saw it several times in the theaters. And, of course, this was made with tremendous cooperation of the U.S. Navy. So, you know, with a few little things here and there, maybe the airplanes being too clean and things like that, it is very accurate. It's a very, very, very accurate film. That is how time travel works for the Navy, and those are the sorts of problems they have when they pick up Charles Durning, because he kind of cants the ship a little bit due to his girth.
Yes.
You would think, being that buoyant, that Charles Durning would be able to, you know, support that. So often when the Navy is transporting Charles Durning in a time travel moment, they have to strap Durning actually to the side and use his buoyancy to overcome the actual mass that he would create on the ship. The score by John Scott, known largely for his King Kong scores, scored the original King Kong and King Kong Lives, shot in North Carolina, near where I am, in Knoxville, Tennessee, in a studio owned by Dino De Laurentiis, next door to where they shot Blue Velvet. I had a friend of mine, Tom Parkhill, is in King Kong Lives, and he would wander over to the set to Blue Velvet and chat with him. Anyway, John Scott wrote the score to this movie, and you know, I don't know quite how Hollywood works. There's a lot of movies, and I don't know why James Horner and Jerry Goldsmith and John Williams seem to get, and John Barry got all the scores, because there are other important composers named John, and John Scott's was one of them. And what a rousing military piece of music, and also has great sort of tender TV movie of the week music as well. Whenever you see Catherine Ross and James Tarantino look at each other, you know, then it turns into this movie of the week. But either way, it's one of my favorite film scores of all time.
It's seamless too. It doesn't like overwhelm. It's just seamless. I mean, there's a lot of percussion, you know, and all that sort of thing in the military scenes, but it just kind of just flows right into it. It doesn't explode into your face.
Joel, why did you ask about the score?
First of all, I enjoyed the hell. Like, going back and rewatching this movie made me realize why I liked it. I love the score. It's very. You're right about the military stuff, but I love the creepiness of the score at the end when the dog runs off and stuff. By the way, thank you, Mr. McCray, for your service to your dad. But this score is masterfully done, and they don't like use synthesizer the way you've seen in the 80s. Halloween 2 is going to use it. You will see other movies like Death Wish 2 use synthesizer. Not this movie, and thank God for it.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it didn't. The 80s synthesizer creep had not hit production quite yet at this point in time.
Yeah. Alan, when did you first see this movie? What did you think of the score?
Well, when we discussed watching this movie yesterday, I guess it was, I thought I had never seen it, but it turns out memory was jogged with several of the scenes in it. And I probably watched, I'm thinking I watched it sometime in the late 80s, probably on television, possibly early 90s, somewhere in there. because I remember specific scenes. I remember Durning being a total tool in this movie. His character, not him. He was just, and Catherine Ross was kind of extremely malleable. And it's just like, I just want to know where the dog is. I kind of remembered all that kind of stuff.
The dog's great.
The dog's fantastic. You're invested in the dog. Almost
you are.
But also the final scene in the movie, I remembered that. I anticipated that, and I said, yes, I have definitely seen this movie before. I'm not imagining it. So yeah. And I think that's why I linked it up with the Philadelphia Experiment for some reason, because I knew before we even started talking about it that there was this time warp thing.
Yeah.
On. So
yeah, I kind of wonder if the Philadelphia Experiment was in the back of the minds of the writers.
Oh, yeah. I can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not doubt that a bit. Inspiration comes from all quarters, and that would be an obvious inspiration for it, for sure.
Daniel, what did you think of the score? Did you?
I really didn't notice, to be honest. I know I probably should have paid a better attention, but now that you guys say they use synthesizers, if I watch this again, I'm gonna have to pay close attention because that's actually kind of cool,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and I actually saw this today. And for those that want to watch this movie, it's actually pretty available. It's actually on Peacock, Tubi, and I think Pluto TV as well.
Yeah, it's on Tubi.
Yeah. It's also on the National Archives.
That's true.
I first watched this movie on VHS, courtesy of my mother. She had just had a bunch of VHSs laying around. And I would watch Back to the Future Part 2. She goes, "You want to see interesting time travel movie?" I said, "Sure." She handed me the Final Countdown, and I put it in. Really, really good movie. Kirk Douglas is on point. Martin Sheen does a hell of a job. Here's a question for you guys. Okay, out of all the, whether you want to call them Sheens or Estevezes, Martin Sheen, Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen, who's your favorite actor of the Sheen family?
Martin Sheen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's the finest of them all, and he's the finest of American actors now. He's probably in the top 10. Yeah.
He's been going at it he started doing television and film back in the mid '60s. Actually, he's in 10 Blocks of the Camino Royale, which was a live production, a semi-live production at least, where he plays the lead in that back in '66, and I got a taste of that. I got a taste of that in a theater class when I was a graduate student. I'd never seen it before, so that would have been the early 2000s, I guess. Yeah, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. So that was the first thing. That's the earliest thing I've ever seen him in. I want to say I think he was also in that same year, '66. In one of he doesn't go by this name anymore, but Amiri Baraka's plays that had been made into teleplay, Dutchman, I think, or
wow,
yeah. And also, I know for sure. I remember. I may be misremembering him being in it, but I'm positive that Beau Bridges was in it. And that was from '66, '67, somewhere in there, black and white, just like 10 Blocks on the Camino Royale. So yeah, Martin Sheen, absolutely. His pedigree, his both his early stage career, and then of course
his lack of tiger blood.
Yeah, he's yes, absolutely, and more winning than any of his sons.
Yeah,
even though I like both of his sons' work, I do, but he's the kingpin, no doubt.
Yeah, he's played some interesting villains too. Obviously in the movie The Dead Zone.
Yeah.
So
yes,
you guys talked about the cooperation of the U.S. Navy which is huge anytime you're making a movie about the Navy.
That's true.
Did they have to pay the Navy, or was there any some sort of
I
sponsorship?
think there was. I mean, there was some kind of rental stuff that went back and forth because there was a lawsuit or something about one of the guys pocketing some of the money that was paid. But the Navy, post Vietnam, very eager to show off a new vessel. The lifespans of these things are about 50 years, and it was only about 10 or 11 years old. So the Nimitz was quite new. And so, we were right on the verge. We weren't there yet, but we were right on the verge of, all of the be all you can be kind of stuff the Army did, and sort of an attempt to get the volunteer armed services recharged after, the horrors of the Vietnam War. Of course, the Navy wasn't really involved in the Vietnam War, so they had a bit of an out with that. But still, yeah, this was a tremendous recruiting tool.
Yeah.
And a recruiting tool not only for just being in the Navy, but for Navy aviation.
Would you say this and Top Gun helped that?
Hell
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, hugely.
Totally. I can almost
yeah.
guarantee you that if you look at the figures, recruitment went up.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact with Top Gun. I mean, recruitment just spiked after that movie came out. Everybody wanted to be a flyer,
Yeah.
Be part of that gung-ho group.
Yeah, with so many movies that, during and after Vietnam that were all about sort of exposing and, exposing the myth of the military and so on and so
Right.
forth. And something so positive, so straightforward, without being, silly and jingoistic and, dopey in that sense and condescending. This movie is never condescending towards the military. It's very straightforward, and it's them on a good day. And I think it's them establishing that good days are most days when you're dealing with things like this and officers of that caliber.
Well, when you have Superfly playing like the officer of the comm, I mean, come on, you've got yourself a serious, Ron without his Superfly hair, man. I didn't recognize it for the first 10 minutes, and then I said, "Oh, there he is."
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's Superfly, man. Yeah, he was actually, that was like 7 or 8 years before, but yeah.
Yeah. He's later in Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins.
Mm-hmm.
He's Con McCleary in that. Have we ever talked about that movie, Joel?
Remo is a great movie.
Remo Williams, yeah.
Fun.
We've talked about that?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it again, we always could. I enjoy
it. Always want to talk about Remo Williams.
Yeah.
We'll set a date for a revisit for sure.
If I owned a drive-in theater, I would have Remo Williams and Buckaroo Banzai on perpetual double feature. That
was a great time for movies.
Oh yeah.
And Final Countdown really sort of helped kick it off.
Yeah. It does, in a weird way. It doesn't almost feel like an 80s movie, but it fits.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, the special effects are definitely early 80s material with all the sort of bluish animation and so on.
You know who did those? That was Maurice Binder, who did the Bond opening credit sequences.
That's right.
And that's why it has that that cloud tank look. Apparently they got him at the last minute because he was very reasonable. And he basically gave James Bond opening credit. They flew into some James Bond opening credits.
Yes.
And they came out in 1941.
Yeah, it's true. And it works. It's it's effective. It doesn't have to be super fancy or anything else. It just needs to transition correctly.
And that's all. That's what it did. That's all it needed to do. And for me, it still looks like a fine effect.
Yeah.
It does its job.
Indeed, it does.
Is this one of to me, I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. This movie feels very timeless. I mean, you could literally watch it and just be hooked.
Well, the military fashions haven't changed tremendously. They don't spend a lot of time staring at computer screens or things like that. Yeah. So that doesn't age the movie. The aircraft, it's not like you have propellers versus jets or something like that. So none of that really reads as old. And even Martin Sheen's costume is relatively contemporary still. People wear shirts with collars. People wear sport coats.
Once we went post double net, everything sort of came back to classic.
Yeah.
Even like the way they go back in time too, because they say about the weatherman, hey, where's they didn't call for this,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Bermuda Triangle effect. I think they were trying to sort of like, ooh, mysterious weather, that kind of thing.
And it works.
Yes.
Yeah, it
It
works.
is. My father sometimes speaks fluent Atlantean because of his time in the Bermuda Triangle. So, he comes out of it after a while.
Antediluvian. Yes.
Yeah, the effect works really well with this movie. And so when they go back in time, they don't realize they're back in time. I love how Kirk Douglas's character wants proof of, okay, I want proof of this. I want to know, okay, where are we?
Yeah, the disorientation is realistic. It's totally realistic. People would be disoriented. They wouldn't immediately come to the conclusion we've traveled through time.
Well, where are the landmarks? There are no landmarks.
Right.
It's not like the ocean looks different.
Yeah.
They were looking for that Russian trawler that they had just seen before the storm hit. And I love how it's not there because, hey, you're back in time. And Kirk Douglas's character, all battle stations, all hands on deck. Smart because you don't know if you're under attack or what.
Yeah. And the first thing they run into is a small yacht that looks like it's a perfectly preserved antique, but I mean there are those out there. So it's like a Chris craft. You still see them from 60, 70, 80 years ago. It's very it's not something that will make you raise an eyebrow the first time you saw it.
I love how we got a refueling scene in this movie.
They did a lot of technical sort of display of what the Navy can do.
Yeah, I mean that was part of the deal.
Stuff.
That was part of the deal with the Navy is that they wanted to show off every piece of engineering that they possibly could. So that's why you have, I think normally you would not have had such a tremendous diversity of aircraft, being seen on the flight deck and so on and so forth. But by God, you were going to see every goddamn thing the Navy had to brag about in this movie, and I love that about it. I mean,
was cool.
You geek out over real stuff. I mean, so many scenes remind me of the flyby around the Enterprise in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but it's all real.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. It's all real.
And Charles Dorning's character sells it too. He's like, did they keep this from me? This would have came in front of me. I love how he reacts to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's realistic. You can believe it.
Yeah. What's interesting is on an episode of NCIS, he played a World War II Medal of Honor winner, which is really interesting. Good episode, too.
He is actually, Durning was not a Medal of Honor winner, but he was a World War II medal winner. He was on the beach. He was at Omaha Beach when they debarked on.
You know who else was there at D-Day? James Doohan.
That's right.
He lost some fingers.
Yep. Of all the people, Yogi Berra was a gunner on one of the boats.
You sure he wasn't communications?
We would have lost the war. I'm sorry. The best to have him behind a gun, as dangerous as that is, not nearly as dangerous as behind a microphone.
Oh my god! That was good. Well, another person in World War II, John F. Kennedy, obviously. So with this movie, guys, first of all, who's your favorite character in this?
There's so many. I mean, I really like Martin Sheen, and I really like Captain Yellen.
Yeah, I would say that Kirk Douglas without products in his hair totally stud, with a sort of Roman haircut that he had in this film, and he was every inch the captain. I mean, he could play that status perfectly well. Now, Marty Sheen is fantastic as the fly in the ointment, the guy that asks all the questions, blah blah blah, all that stuff too.
He's the McCoy.
Yeah.
Daniel, who's your favorite character, man?
I don't remember his name, to be honest, but the guy that knows a lot about history. I thought he was pretty cool.
James Ferrantino's
Ferrantino.
character.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the script is listed as James Ferrantino's character. That's what
because I am James Ferrantino.
Send in James Ferrantino's character. He's got some answers.
He's Ferrantino is the younger testosterone element in the picture. He's also obviously the romantic interest.
Yes,
to Catherine Ross. So
well, beyond Charles Durning, of course.
Of course,
we do see another veteran actor in this movie, a Soon Tik Ho, as Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service pilot samurai. Very good actor. But by the way, he appears in that episode of NCIS. He defends Charles Dorning's character, which I like.
How ironic.
Yeah.
I wonder if Durning was a little, he's just, make sure you keep people with M16s away from him.
Yes.
Yeah, I love how he
was shooting him out of the courtroom and helping him escape or something.
I love how
being a good soldier.
Yeah. I love how he operates the equipment very well. He kills the guards. He does it. This all happens like really fast, but then when it slows down and you have like this hostage standoff situation, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. No, he's very good in a very small. It's kind of a thankless role in some ways, but he's very, very good and very committed to it. In a way that makes sense.
He keeps his head really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because, he always seems to be a professional soldier. He is, so that never becomes histrionic.
Yeah, he's not a berserker. He's a soldier. Yeah.
That's true. What would you guys do if you were in this situation?
If I were whom?
Oh, if you were.
Situation.
Well, you went back in time and you're like in World War II. I mean, would you try to stop the war?
That's if I could inform them about the Pearl Harbor invasion.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't, because a lot of history now suggests that President Roosevelt knew that this was happening, and he knew that with the unfortunate sacrifice that was going to have to be made, it would be the thing that would propel America into the war, and America's participation in the war was vital for the preservation of the planet.
Right.
And if I didn't know that, maybe I'd try to do something, but I'd be labeled a lunatic. And then when it happened, I'd be on a table in the Pentagon for the next 30 years with them sticking probes into me.
Right.
That's true. That's actually a good point. I actually didn't know that about like what you're saying. Like, I just thought I didn't know the government knew about it, but I thought it was just one of those situations where they didn't take it seriously.
They knew it was coming. It wasn't like he had the battle plan, but he knew it was coming. There was a lot of indication and a lot of intelligence on it, and he kind of allowed it to happen because there was still an isolationist element in government that wanted to stay out of the war, even in spite of the fact that we'd already spent a year giving equipment and money and aid to the British in order to help them fend off the Nazis during the Battle of Britain. So.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I learned that in history class too. They suspected that the Japanese may attack them. It's crazy.
I think if I had enough money and ability, I would do what I could to try and get as many civilians away from that base as possible. I don't know. I think that, to try and prevent as much human life being lost in that as possible. Yeah. But I don't know how that would happen. Apparently,
and then again, you've got
Mai Tais there.
Yeah, you've also got the butterfly effect to contend with too if you start.
Yeah,
that's true. I always remember the butterfly effect.
Yeah. Don't mess with time.
Yeah.
Unless you're Barnabas
stuff.
Collins.
Yeah. That's one bad thing though. Like you never know. Like you could actually successfully stop it, but then World War II, like it becomes way worse somehow.
Yeah, something else happens. Yeah.
Favorites? What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie?
I actually like the climax of the movie. I like the denouement. I like the last part of the movie.
I like the last scenes of the movie. I really do. I mean, I genuinely, that's absolutely true. That punchline really works.
Yeah.
With
I'd say
Tarantino and Ross.
I'd say the end too. Yeah, it was pretty good. Like I especially liked when they, like when they went back to the present time.
Yeah.
When that music, when the car pulls up, because you don't see who's in the car in the beginning, and you hear that creepy music, and the dog goes to the car,
Right.
and then the dog gets to the car, you hear the woman's voice, you're like, no, can't be, and yeah, it is.
It is.
I think that's just a big, in a good way, a punch in the gut.
And I'd say that Tarantino's characters made himself quite wealthy with the knowledge.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Because they have this big, huge, limousine that they're traveling around in, and so on. And so he was like the good version of Biff, with the
That's exactly what
Sports
he is.
Digest.
He works for the Department of Defense, right? The guy in the
Lasky or
in the limo too. He hired.
Yeah.
He's
a contractor.
Yeah. And and Martin Sheen's character is like, I know very little about the guy. I've never even seen.
Yeah.
It's like, poor Martin Sheen. Then at the end, we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. 40 years worth.
Yes, we do.
And that's that's almost a John Carpenter effect.
Yeah.
Because it lets the movie keep going in your mind. What's that conversation like? What goes on after
it's a
that?
full circle with an out. It's like keep going,
Yeah. I really love this movie. I really do. It has been a companion for me throughout most of my life, for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I really treasure it.
I love how they did, like, they had a Japanese interpreter right on the ship too. It made sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've got 6,500 men on that ship.
Yeah.
One of them is going to speak Japanese.
Yeah. It's probably a couple of people that speak Arabic and Mandarin and Russian and so on.
Considering that ship can go anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to get all the way there with 6,500 men and all of this aircraft and all these munitions and not be able to speak a language.
Right.
My nephew in high school, his senior year, he is taking German for a language.
That's pretty cool.
So
it was common when I was growing up to take German and French up in the Northeast where I grew up. Down here in the South, it's Spanish.
German is the language of love, though.
Oh, it's not that French was.
No!
I see what you mean. Okay, never mind. What's funny? Actually, that's the thing. In my high school, we had the option between French, Spanish, or Latin for some reason. But what's funny is I think in my senior year they introduced German as well.
That's interesting.
They still had Latin in parochial schools when I was growing up, but they kind of killed it at the local high schools.
Yeah, they finally we don't have German anymore at the school I work at. Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, to be fair though, Mandarin is a pretty heavily spoken language, so it would be useful to learn.
It's a language of commerce for a lot of people, international commerce, along with English and French. It's a commercial language and it's a diplomatic language too.
I like that moment of silence between the woman and the man on the deserted island, and as he's looking at the rations. I love that. That was so good.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to become of them. And then when you see the end, it's like, wait, what? It all comes full circle, like you guys talked about.
Yeah.
I give this a 10. Great movie. Fun movie.
Oh, yeah, 10. Easy. Two of these.
Drop a dime.
Is there anything you guys want to add about this?
No, what do we want to watch next?
I have a perfect companion to this. Well, it doesn't have time travel. How about some Stalag 17?
Ah, you're talking my language.
It's on. I'll send it to you guys on the. Yes. I'll send it to you guys. Is tomorrow good, guys? At 10:30.
Tomorrow's
That's
great.
for me.
Okay.
Sure.
And
I'll
hang
send
around
it to
after this, Jewel. I got something I got to ask you.
I will. There, as soon as I get this uploaded, there's going to be many links. Links to Alan Glenn's YouTube channel, Collins Sport After Dark is going to be up. Links to Patrick McRae's Dark Shadows Day Book Unbound is going to be in there. Go pick it up if you haven't already. And links to Daniel Culver's channel, Killenberg, is going to be in the description box. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night.